Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, I wanted to start off with a bit of a national picture here, and I want to talk about soil moisture to get us going. This map was a week ago, last Monday on the 8th, looking at the 16-inch or 40 centimeter soil moisture data from NASA. And what I want to show you here is that while we were seeing, dry conditions that were setting up here across eastern North Carolina and then pockets throughout New England, a lot of the focus across the country was in the western Corn Belt and in the ongoing long-term drought that's been in parts of the southern plains. Well, this is what things have looked like in the weeks since. So just over the last 7 days, this is the change. So here's the latest map. This is the one from last week. Now, some important rains came through North Carolina over the weekend, and we've got more that's coming. But I also want to tell you that some of the drought situation going on in the midwestern part of the United States, in the western Corn Belt, and then down here in the southern plains will be breaking as well. We're even going to see some relief up here in parts of New England and then pockets throughout the eastern Corn Belt. But it's going to start with some rains that are coming through parts of North Carolina right now. We just want to take a look at what all of this looks like, and I'm going to show you just a forecast of soil moisture. So what you've got here is what we call volumetric soil moisture. It goes down to 4 inches. Now, you'll notice that the max value is 50% because when you look at a volumetric soil moisture calculation, saturated soil is 50% water, 50% soil. All right. Now, we can see where the heavy rains, we even have flood watches out for this area this morning and over toward the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. But where we just saw drought, just a quick reminder, okay, these areas, we're going to see some pretty substantial relief. Ready? As we play this through Monday into Tuesday, that's our first round of rain. We're then going to watch later as the rains come through right into parts of the Mid-South later on this week to come back over us again as a front straddles this whole region here across the southeast. Then as we play into the weekend, more rains coming through our area, keeping our soil moisture higher. And then going into early next week, we can see, look at the southern plains, look at the Mid-South, look at the rain that's going to be returning to this area, while the West Coast goes hot and while the West Coast goes very dry in this pattern. You see, this change in soil moisture is going to be critical to the success of a lot of crops across the country. We just need to get in there and look and see what's going on. So I was watching some radar animation. I just want to show you the last, Sunday night through Monday morning here. Just some of the storms that were coming through North Carolina, delivering some locally heavy rain in parts of western North Carolina. But we're going to be seeing more of this as another low will be curling up over this area very soon. But if we just stitch it all together, this is our last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation across the country. And it even features a tropical system that came into parts of Texas, very weak and just developed over the weekend, that's moving along the Rio Grande here, eventually getting pulled into the southwest monsoon. Now, just before we take a look at North Carolina, notice there were storms in dry pockets of Indiana, in parts of the upper Midwest, and rain coming through the northern plains, and you just saw how this is going to build down the line over the next 36 hours. The southwest monsoon continues to crank, and just before all this heat that's coming into the northwest came in here, we saw, just to let you know, some really nasty severe weather in parts of eastern Washington, Oregon, and Idaho over the weekend, including a lot of damage from hail here. But if we just take a closer look at what we've got so far, some places here picked up 2 inches of rainfall just in the last weekend. We're going to be adding quite a bit more to this very soon. Now, what's causing all of this is best seen by looking at the upper levels. And what we're watching here is a forecast of the trough and ridge pattern out through later this week. So what you notice is that by the time we get to Thursday night, Friday, we just have a large ridge that just runs up here into like Alberta, Canada, and this larger trough that's in place. So this trough will eventually cut off right here and just put an upper level low. And what you need to remember about these is that to the south of them, there's always a front, a cold front. And notice there's high pressure sitting here. Well, there's going to be flow that's going to come around that cold front like this, and that's where we're going to increase our best chances for rainfall. So it not only picks up again late this week, but then going into the weekend and into early next week, we don't see much of a change. Do you see that? Even though it looks as though it gets washed out a bit, this is still our pattern. So the net effect of all of this is that over the next 15 days, this is precipitation anomalies, where we've had extreme drought from Texas into the parts of the Mid-South and here in the Central Plains, and then where we've had regional drought developing in the Southeast through the Mid-Atlantic, there's going to be some much above average rainfall forecast. This has been very consistent, going back about 8 days in the forecast, so we're really tending to buy into these changes pretty well. Now, the longer range forecast, we're going to spend just a moment here talking about it. is not revealing much of a change overall in the pattern. I believe it's heavily influenced by the next 2 weeks. So what you're looking at here is the August 24 to September 24 precipitation outlook. And I'm going to be honest, I look at this and I would give it a very small chance at verifying. And the reason for that is we still have a La Nina, which means we could get that ridge that's over the west to come back to the Midwest. All right. Also, it's tropical season. And even though we're going to cover this in a second, nothing's going on right now. One tropical system that, I don't know, maybe develops here in the Gulf or right off the coast and then comes into North Carolina or then comes into the lower Mississippi River Valley and heads toward North Carolina could really just make this whole forecast wrong. It's that time of year where there's low predictability on rainfall because of the tropical season. So we're going to look at it here, but we're going to add to this, complement this with some different data, okay? And the first part of that comes from a look at what's going on with ocean temperatures. This La Nina is still going. The very hot water between Hawaii and the Aleutian Islands is still there. And so what this really does is it sets up the pattern in the Gulf of Alaska, and it tells us where the ridges are going to be. And on top of that, look at how warm the water still sits off the coast of Africa. There's some cooler water here, but overall, the ocean temperatures for where we're going to watch tropical cyclones potentially to develop is plenty warm to develop them. The problem has actually been wind shear issues and way too much dust coming off of the Sahara. High wind shear at times in the Caribbean and parts of the main development region, that's uncharacteristic of a La Nina. Normally, La Nina pulls back the wind shear risk, but this has just been a year where that's kind of gone against that traditional, correlation here. But this La Nina, I think it's going to be our main driver for our fall pattern. So let's spend some time just talking about fall, because we continue to see that over the next 15 days, so here's today going all the way through the end of August, you see these blue-greens here? That just tells me the trade winds are going. You've probably seen me draw this 100 times this summer. And it's because this has just been the case. The westerlies coming out of the Indian Ocean and the stronger trades here. Now, I want to make a comment about this. The pattern that's broken down right now, where we got this big ridge building west, it's largely because of this feature here. Strong easterly winds in the Indian Ocean. They regain their westerly component very soon, which is why I call into question these longer range forecasts, because if that allows for a ridge to redevelop here, then that's going to give us a whole different look going forward. That's just one piece of this. But we talk about this La Nina and ask about its longevity, so let's just talk about that next. First, I'm going to take you to the Bureau of Meteorology, commonly called BOM. It's out of Australia. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at a September through January forecast from the Australians, the Canadians, the Europeans, getting in here to the Japanese, the French, the United States, and the British. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a forecast based on these bars, on La Nina versus El Nino. So you'll notice that from September into October and November, most of them are continuing to maintain La Nina or even let it strengthen. When you get into December, though, and then January, the models are kind of backing off, except for the Canadians. They really aggressively went back toward La Nina. NOAA's forecast has been the most corrective. They've gone from this to this, and that's one that I'm watching most carefully. Now, to complement that, I showed this last week if you watched some of my other video content on the newest forecast from the IRI multi-model group. Remember, the blue bars are the probability of having La Nina, the gray, neutral, the red, El Nino. So you can see that from October, November, December through December, January, February, it appears as though the La Nina could start to fade while more neutral conditions build back in. That's climatologically consistent, and I'll just say this. All of our long-range forecasts of La Nina for this summer failed pretty miserably, so I think there's a lot of uncertainty with this. But all of the models are clued into this pattern, keeping La Nina through fall. And that is why the data for September, October, November show risk of being drier in this area. It's not only in the NMME, that's the National Multi-Model Ensemble, but it's also in the European model. See that? Now, we always look at this and go, but it's September and October. That's a busy time for tropical systems. So we know that even though we could favor drier conditions once we get past the next couple of weeks, a tropical system could come through and upset this at any given time. So I'm just going to make this statement. If we maintain the La Nina that we've got right now, and we do not have a tropical system that pushes back into the southeast, back into the lower Mississippi River Valley, which could then funnel its moisture into North Carolina, or a direct hit on North Carolina, we could be looking at a better chance at being drier than normal. It is certainly in most of the long-range models. So that kind of gives us some perspective. The temperature side of this, it's not even worth looking at. The models are all over the place compared to the analogs on the temperatures, and so I can't even give it kind of like much skill or any accuracy. So we're just going to sit with the precipitation outlook at this point. Now, since we're talking about the tropics, I just want to point out National Hurricanes Center has given a 0% chance on this weak disturbance that's north of, pretty far to the north and east of Puerto Rico. But we'll keep an eye out on the tropics right now, because this dusty air that's coming off the Sahara, at some point, it will begin to, I think, break down. And when it does, will allow for, I think, better survival rate of a system that's coming off of the Atlantic. Now, we are watching another easterly wave coming off of Africa right now, but I'm just not sure if it's going to be able to endure the really dry and dusty air. So to give you some stats on this year, because remember, almost everybody, myself included, have been forecasting an above average season. When you look at what's called accumulated cyclone energy, that's how much total energy is in each tropical cyclone added up. You can see that normally we're sitting way up here. By the 15th of August, we're at 14.6 units, and we're currently looking at 2.8. So we're way below average. We've flatlined on this. But I just want to point out, this is the time of year when we really typically see a ramp up. So all eyes are going to be to the east and the south for the next, 45 to 60 days. All right. From here, let's come back to the bigger picture of the near term. Over the next week, you got this map over here on the left. It's looking at precipitation anomalies over the next week. So we have the scattered storms today. We have the system that's coming down here that's going to eventually lay out a front that's going to get us later on this week. That's our next 7 days, okay? From here into week 2, see it? The pattern just continues to favor this larger ridge in place here, broader trough there, in fact, a little cutoff low that sits here. And again, it's hard to be drier than normal if you've got all that troughing happening over the Great Lakes states. So from there, let's just diagnose and spell out the next several days. We'll wrap this up with a discussion on South American weather, and we'll be finished. So today's outlook for severe storms, we do have the risk later on today for more of these strong to severe storms to come into parts of central North Carolina. I'm going to show you that by going to the high-res NAM model. Here we go. So starting about 9 o'clock this morning and playing forward, can you see the spin in the lower atmosphere here? That's all a reflection of the upper level low that's sitting in that area. And this is why late today into tonight, more scattered severe storms in this area are possible. So this could last into the overnight hours. Now, after that, you're going to watch this piece. Because as we go forward, that's the front right there. See it? That sets us up for more rain on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I'm just rocking back and forth over about a 36-hour time period here. And you can see we've got quite a bit of chance for rain over the next 36 hours. Your eye was probably caught by the system coming through Texas over the Rio Grande today, too. That is a pretty weak tropical system that'll eventually get pulled into the Four Corners states, possibly adding more flooding rains to a place that over the weekend, right down here on the Arizona border, saw several inches of rain and massive amounts of flooding. From here, though, let's go take a look at what the European model says. Let's just kind of get a 10-day outlook here. So we've already seen the chances, there we go, over Monday, Tuesday, and into Wednesday. Now, as we play it later in the week, you're going to see that through Thursday and Friday, the better chances of rain stay farther to our south. We could see scattered storms, but the better chances of rain late this week are farther to our south. That is until you get into Friday night into Saturday. And at that point, that's when the upper level low takes over. So systems are going to try to pull around it like this, just increasing our overall chance for rain. Basically, the whole week is going to have chances for rain, but maybe a little midweek lull there, maybe Wednesday into Thursday. Then as we play into the weekend, that upper level low sits and spins, so our flow just kind of keeps coming around like this as the low sits here, so more chances of scattered rain. And then we go into Monday and Tuesday of next week, and it's just there. That is what happens when the ridge pulls up like this. A deeper trough sits around a cutoff low. We're just going to see chances for rain all week long. Now, if I added it up in the models are going to be very disappointing in their performance with this. In other words, they're not going to give you an accurate total rainfall amount. But what I can show you is a suite of maps here that I think are going to give us a better idea of what to expect. So this is from now to the 25th, so a 10-day forecast looking at the probability of getting at least an inch of rainfall. And you can see that we're 90 to 100%. This is the probability of getting at least 2 inches of rainfall. So some places here could, this is a 70 to 90% chance of having at least 2 inches of rainfall. And just so you know, some of these storms could produce some locally heavy rainfall, possibly adding up well above 2 inches. So we just need to be on the lookout this next week for some very heavy rain. And just as a reminder, day 10 pattern is still very similar. Got the flow coming around the subtropical high, and that's why out there into week 2, we don't see it showing up drier for the Carolinas into Virginia. Now, just take a look elsewhere. Drought, I'll call it drought denting. I don't know if that's a phrase, but drought denting rain in parts of Texas in the Mid-South. Much cooler weather's coming in with this as well. We're going to replace a lot of the heat here with some much below normal temperatures. But it's the Carolinas that got the cold temperatures right now. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Today's all hazards, well, we still have the excessive heat here. Well, the heat advisory, excuse me. This is a flood watch. And then look at the excessive heat coming up into California and into the northwest. We are the cool spots. Highs today, getting into Virginia, trying to get out of the 70s. But watch this. This is Monday into Tuesday. I mean, this August 16th, a high in Raleigh forecast to be around 70 Fahrenheit. What a day. That's, of course, the rainy weather, the cloudy weather, but still just something to see here. Going from Tuesday into Wednesday, we back off that heat that's been in the southern plains, and now we see it building through the Central Valley of California into the northwest. We're still sitting in the 70s. It's there on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Notice we don't see a day where there is a risk of having much above average temperatures all the way through next Sunday. And that continues. This is a 5-day sliding window of temperatures taking us all the way out here. We'll park it right there on the 20th through the 25th of August, and we'll just keep going. And all the way through the next 15 days, the risk of us seeing warmer than average temperatures is very low. We'll likely stay somewhere between 2 and 5 to maybe 2 to 8 degrees cooler than normal for this time of year, while the heat builds into the west and into the Canadian prairie. I am very concerned about the risk of wildfires in the west. High evaporation rates combined with any wind is going to produce a fire risk here. But for the first time all year, there's cooler weather coming into Texas for more than just a day or so. So just keep that in mind when we're looking nationally here. Corn Belt area, rainfall is coming through, and the cooler weather is going to help with the rest of grain fill. But the west and the northern plains and the Canadian prairie are taking on the heat. One last thing to talk about, South America. This is the next 10 days of precipitation anomalies. And what I'm concerned about here is the wetter weather that is coming in to this region. Now, why I'm concerned about it is because nearly all of the long-range forecast models were predicting drought before the monsoonal rains returned to the northern part of Brazil. And it was mainly focused in southern Brazil. So what this means is if these rains do materialize and come into this area, it will add quite a bit of moisture ahead of when they're going to plant their crop, which they'll start on September 15th. So they started a month from right now. So these are very beneficial rains. We have got some pretty substantial drought, though, into parts of Uruguay and into Argentina that need to be overcome. But we're going to watch carefully for when the monsoonal rains return to the north, because as soon as they're there and we get past September 15th, they're going to plant quickly. Just a reminder, this is a global view, but all the long-range models are predicting better rains to the north with risks kind of centered closer to Argentina going forward. And you can have a look at this map. This is the September, October, November global outlook on precipitation. You can see some things going on in both Australia and India being above average in precip, while we expect more dry conditions throughout Europe. That's been an ongoing problem all summer long. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here, and we'll look forward to talking again next Monday. Thanks.